All right, let's do this. First off, got our live audience over here, live via webcam. If y'all can see that all right. There we go. And it came to pass that on the third day, when the morning came, that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the shofar exceeding loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled in fear. Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Hayes. I am the principal horn player for the Iona Brass, second chair horn player for the Northwind Symphonic Band, which is what it says here on this the shirt I've got. Just a shameless plug for the group in case y'all are in the Gainesville area and ever want to listen to some good music. We're going to talk a little bit today about the French horn, its history, where it came from, and what makes it a rather unique instrument. What is a French horn, you might ask? Well, just one second. I've got one over here. We'll show you. This is a French horn. As you can see, it's kind of roughly a snail-shaped instrument. And it kind of wraps around itself several times here. Unlike most brass instruments, the French horn is a conical instrument. Trumpets and most other brass instruments are cylindrical. They're a constant diameter all the way through until just before the bell. The French horn is conical shaped. It's constantly widening from one end to the other. As you can see here, it starts rather narrow and gets bigger as it goes through, constantly bigger as it goes through the horn until it comes out the bell. The horn is played with two hands. The left hand actually supports the horn and works the valves. The right hand fits in the bell, and you hold it similar to that. The reason for that, the earliest horns had no valves, so to change notes, they moved their hand in the bell. I can't do that. I'm not that good at it, but there are some who can. Modern horns are all pitched in the key of F, which means when you play an open C, the sound that comes out is actually an F, which is a fifth lower. This horn is a Conn 8D French horn. It's actually a double horn, and just more about that in just one second. This horn was made in about 1961-62, so it's older than I am. This was actually a U.S. Army surplus horn. It was used in the U.S. Army Band by my father until he retired from the Army, and he purchased it as salvage and brought it home and played it for another 10 years before he gave up horn, and I took it over from him. The mouthpiece on the horn is also unique. Most instruments use a cup-shaped mouthpiece. The French horn's a funnel shape, and actually I've got a better example over here. A little easier to see with this mouthpiece. As you can see, that looks like a very small funnel. You look down inside. It gives it a unique tone in the orchestra on the brass instruments. Now back to this horn. This is the double horn. Remember I said that most horns are pitched in F. This one's actually pitched in F and B flat. This top set of tubing here is key of F, and the bottom is key of B flat. And the reason for that, the horn has a 5-octave range in theory, and some of the very best players can actually play that, but at that level they typically specialize, especially the very best horn players in the best orchestras. First chairs play the high stuff, second chairs play the middle stuff, etc. So they specialize in their ranges. But folks like me who are generalists, the higher you get in the range and the lower you get in the range, the harder the notes are to hit. The higher you go, the closer the notes are together. Their intervals are smaller. If you think of a piano keyboard, where as you get higher to the right, higher and higher on the notes, the keys get smaller and smaller. They're more narrow and harder to hit in one key at a time. It's the same with the French horn. To get around that, they created the double horn. This trigger here, this top one, it's operated by the thumb, changes the key from an F to a B flat, which raises the tone. Instead of a fifth down from a C, it's only one step down from a C. It makes those upper notes much easier to hit, as well as the very low notes much easier to hit. Uh, this is interesting to note too. If you take a French horn and a double horn, modern double horn, and you unwrap all that tubing, you've got an instrument that's about 25 feet long. We're pushing a lot of air through those things. That's another reason they're so hard to play. Younger people don't have the lung capacity to play a horn that size and play it well. So it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of work to play one and play it well. Where did the horns come from? Well, imagine thousands of years ago, an ancient man wandering around and stumbling across an animal horn that had been broken off at both ends and hollowed out by insects, wind, rain, whatever. And he picked it up and he blew in the end of it and it made a noise. That's where the horn comes from. Again, horn is conical, animal horn's conical. Bingo. From the animal horn up around the Bronze Age, man started making these out of bronze. They were not wrapped around like the modern horn. We'll get to how that occurred later. What happened in the Bronze Age in Ireland and in Scotland and other Celtic areas, we know they used an instrument called the carnix. We know that because they've discovered caches of religious artifacts that were hidden away from the early Christians and the Romans, and we've dated those materials to about 400 BC, I think is the oldest ones we've found. We don't know exactly what they were used for, but they're direct ancestors of the horn because they're conical instruments. Also the shofar, which is used in Jewish religious ceremonies and has been used since forever, as far back as we can, as they trace their history. The quote earlier that I opened with was from Exodus in the Old Testament of the Bible. The shofar is a conical instrument, just like the horn. Along about the 1400s and 1500s, hunting from horseback became popular, and they decided to take those long horns and wrap them around themselves to make them easier to carry on horseback, and they used them to communicate back and forth during the hunt, from the hunters to the dogs and to people who were falling behind, so they would know what was going on. During that time, the horns were made all over Europe, but the best horns were made in France, and they called those, to differentiate them, the best horns were called French horns. And that's where the modern term comes from, because the best instruments were French. Unfortunately, it's actually a German manufactured. Modern horn is a German horn. In the early 1800s, the Germans added rotary valves to the horn, where instead of like a trumpet, for instance, if you push on the valve, the piston goes up and down to change the notes. On the French horn, it's a rotary valve. It spins. That makes it a more lyrical sound when you switch notes. It doesn't stop the note as much when you're changing from note to note. Now, that's just a quick introduction to the horn. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. And if you were paying attention, I hope you noticed the music in the background. That was the Berlin Philharmonic horn section playing Ruslan and Ludmilla Overture by Glinka. That was originally scored for a full orchestra, and that French horn section just played it all by themselves on nothing but French horn. So I hope this has piqued your interest. If you'd like to hear more French horns, Mahler's Fifth Symphony is excellent, and Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and there's several Haydn horn concertos that are staples in the horn repertoire. I hope you go out and take a look and listen to some of those. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned a little bit.